I do believe that there is no bobo in this world. I do believe that there is no ignorant in this world. I do believe that there is no small player in the company. All of us are players. It just so happens that by law of nature, there's only one tree, there's only one queen, and then all of us are all participants. In other words, we have our own role to play in the organization. Whether you are the executive or you are the janitor. If you are the janitor, tell your janitor to be the best janitor that you can be. If you are the executive, be the best executive that you can be. In other words, it's so frustrating for us, especially for the government. And right now, I think that the government should change our labor policy in deploying or allowing OFWs. Number one, maybe in countries like Japan or in other countries, Filipinos are treated badly, Filipinos are maltreated, Filipinos are second class citizens. And it pains me to see that professionals are doing jobs that she cannot do here in the Philippines. We already saw that doctors are doing the job of the nurses, the teachers doing the job of the caregiver, the principal doing the job of the caretaker. That is because the government allows the exporting of Filipino talent to flourish so bad. And our role now in the Philippines as head of managing people is to enhance the skill of our employees. We should not stop in promoting excellence in the workplace, because our competing countries like Vietnam and China and Burma are now catching on us. And in fact, if we are saying that Filipinos are good in English, Filipinos are good in the production shop floors, it may be true, but sooner or later it will not be true anymore, because the competitors are now at our doorstep. Malapit na tayong ma-overtake. Now, maybe as a final word to all of us here, I want to challenge everyone. What little things we can do for ourselves that we can do for our country. We cannot be forever, sorry to say, we cannot be forever as slaves in a Japanese company, in an American company, in a European company. Why can't we develop our own brand of Filipino company? And it can be done. Look what Jollibee have done to develop the Filipino brand. It has now penetrated China and other countries. So in other words, pwede pala. When I was asked to speak about managing Filipino workers in a Japanese company, ang naisip ko is to challenge everyone that we should now be probably doing or working for a Filipino company. And in the same manner, that was the challenge to the Japanese, I think 40 years ago, when their emperor or their prime minister challenged their fellow Japanese to stand up and improve themselves amidst the rumble of war and devastation. But right now, tapos na yung gera eh. But we're still struggling as a country, as an individual. Pasensya na kayo, I sound patriotic about this, but it's time to rise up and challenge ourselves to do excellent work, to be excellent in our responsibility. Gone are the days of self-pity. Gone are the days of looking at our neighbor to be they are the superior race. No, we are the superior race in this country. We are the superior race in this region, and our Japanese friends are looking at us. In fact, if you notice, no, if they are sending trainees, now it's the reverse. Before we are sending trainees to Japan, now Now, maybe other countries are now sending trainees to the Philippines. Sayang nga lang because our local counterparts, our local engineers can no longer go to our countries. Kasi the trainees are now being held in the Philippines. But it's so sad, in a way, but it is a reward to all of us that our excellence, our goodness are now being recognized worldwide. And for you, being managers of your own people, I rise to the challenge of making them more excellent employees, whether that be in Japanese or American companies. So, I think it's about time, tutulong-tulong na tayo. It's about time. Thank you very much for listening.
Maraming salamat po sa ating makabayang profesor, si Mr. Bong Tamayaw. Salamat po. Can we have a commitment? We all rise to the challenge that we are a supreme race in the Asian region.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Tama po ba?
Yes.
Yes. Nationalist na tayo lahat dapat. Okay. I'm sure we have a lot of agreements or disagreements. In fact, he possesses a very good challenge to all those traits that only Filipinos have, and yet maybe we're not rising yet to the challenge. So let's move on to the second reflection of a local speaker, the next one, but I'd like to introduce him first. Our second speaker to talk on his own, very own reflections as well on how to manage Filipino workers in Japanese companies. Let me get to the background. Our speaker is called, dito muna siya, syempre he hailed from the north in Baguio. He is a blue graduate. Ito graduate at Ateneo in high school. Okay, and then he moved to take his secondary in high school with bronze medal, okay, in Hanjang High School in Penang, Malaysia. Mover siya, traveler, as far as education is concerned. And then he came back to the country and joined Ateneo back, okay, BS in Business Management. And he took Japanese language studies in same school, Ateneo de Manila University. And then he took studies in Japan, starting in University of Tsukuba in Ibaraki, Japan. And then he was a Ministry of Education scholar, Japanese scholar, and took up Masters of Business Administration and graduating as a straight-A student in Yokohama National University. And then he has 17 years of experience in several Japanese companies. He now teaches in different schools, helping our Philippine institutions like University of Asia Pacific College, De La Salle University, and Assumption College, and in both masteral and undergraduate studies. I won't tell more about him. You should know more about his reflection. So I give you the speaker, the second speaker, our very own, I might get wrong, Mr. Toots or Tomas R. Kyoge. He has also a consultancy, the R. Kyoge Consultancy Group.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. First, let me thank Mr. Ventura and Mr. Calvo for the invitation. I happily agreed to share my experiences. I looked at the profile of the participants, and some are in HR, some are in manufacturing, some are executives. And it's very timely that we have this gathering, this topic, because this is the era of the Pacific. It means the money will be in Asia, is in Asia. And the big proof, the proof of the pudding is that
the great United States is mobilizing 60 to 70% of its naval forces in Asia. They want to make sure that they continue to be a player in the era of the Pacific. So whether you are working for a Japanese company, or whether you have a Japanese client, or you have a Japanese supplier, hopefully my experience, my sharing today will give you some insights. So let me start by sharing with you some lessons which became helpful to me when eventually I became head of HR of a Fujitsu Philippines, a leading IT company in the Philippines, and Fujitsu Google. So I took up my 6 months intensive in homegrown, which I did not do quite well. And I encountered the sensei. The sensei is the teacher. The Tsukuba is Otsubo sensei, the Yokohama is Kumura sensei. And the sensei is not just a teacher. Eventually, we come to understand the Oyabun and Kobun relationship. That the teacher, just like in any Japanese organization, is the father of the house. And we are the sons. And there is a paternalistic relationship, maybe from Confucian values, rooted in Confucian values. If you can switch on your Asian values and turn off your Western values, if you come to the provinces, we have Kuya, Ichi, Iko, Ate, the hierarchy in the family. And the father is absolute, the traditional Filipino values. So it's not very different, the Oyabun and the Kobun. Then I encountered the senpai. The Filipinos who were in Tsukuba ahead of me were our senpais, and they took care of us. They facilitated our immersion into Japanese life. And the senpai again is like an older brother, a younger brother. And when I went to Yokohama University, I was assigned a Japanese senpai who became my mentor, and I was the mentee, so that I could adjust to the university life and Japanese life. I discovered that everything that we did, we were never alone. We worked, studied together, and we played together. And I became conscious that we were always in groups. And Shudan Shugi is the concept of the group. We were never alone. So far these three are all about relationships. Hitozukuri. I observed that in a Japanese environment, you need to be polite. You need to be respectful. And there are many words for it. So many ways to say, excuse me, I will be rude, let me do this, that. Okay. The world of a Japanese environment is we need to be polite and respectful. Maraming tao. Gambari masyo. Shorten me, gambari to the side. As a student, please exert your best efforts. Try your hardest, best. And I came in Japan as a student, 33 years old. So I was no longer that young to learn Japanese as well as my other classmates. So I was always in the bottom rank of this class. But we were always told to shut the way of try your best, try your best. Fine. I noticed that Japan is a world of ceremonies and functions, rituals. There's always campaign. Open the ceremony, close the ceremony, we toast. We start the ceremony. The documents. I use this word, a lesson that I learned that aside from being polite, it is we also need to be humble. That in learning the Japanese language, there are different levels of honorifics. And even in the formal Nihongo, there's always a polite way of saying things. Very indirect way. And itadakimasu means like, I will receive humbly. Thank you very much. Whether it's a food, whether it's a gift. But it is a very humble way of saying thank you very much. My wife, mother is Japanese. So her uncles and aunts are still alive in Japan. And when I was a student, we were invited over for dinner at the uncle's house. And the uncle was president of a Mitsubishi subsidiary. So I could not speak Japanese very well at the time, so I needed my wife to be the interpreter, translator. And I took the opportunity to ask him. I told him, I'll be going to Yokohama University to take my MBA. And may I know what is Japanese management? He said he never went to university. Because during the war, he was in a submarine. And after the war, he was immediately had to look for work. So he never went to university. But he would share with me certain things that helped him rise up and become president of a Japanese company, a Mitsubishi company, one of the subsidiaries. First, he said, Japanese logic is different from Western logic. In Japan, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1. We are 1. Again, reinforcing the rule, which I experienced in school. We're never alone. We're always in a group. If I remember correctly, he used the word "itaika," oneness. He also said, I became president not because I was the smartest, nor did I have the solutions. I became president because of ningen kanke, or human relationships. I am able to have the different groups of people in the organization, the different coalitions, agree for what direction to be taken. It is the power of influencing people. And so it's very basic management. Management is working with people. Even the Western MBA, that is how it is defined. So, I took that part. And I remember that in my MBA studies and in working for Japanese corporations. The third one, he said, be ambitious. And when I took my MBA studies, I said, no wonder. The slogan of Japan was catch up to the West. They're always ambitious. They always benchmark themselves to the best and try to close the gap. Get Western technology. Hitachi's slogan is, we are GE plus IBM. Tao Philippine, Tao is BPG. Fujitsu is catch up with IBM. So the slogans of challenge, the spirit and challenge, whether you're were actually successful or not. Be ambitious. So I went to my MBA program in Yokohama National University. And I learned the word AA which is business philosophy, management philosophy. I agree with the previous speakers. It's a very different world. I thought that when I left the Philippines, all the countries in the world who were on the democratic side, on the capitalistic side, did business the same way, or thought business the same way. I was very, very wrong. In the interview for the entrance, the first question was very philosophical. What is the purpose of the corporation? What is the purpose of the manager? And if I had answered that it is to increase the earnings per share of the stockholder, which is the standard answer in AIM, Teneo, Lasal, I probably wouldn't have made it. But I was coached by my uncle. So, Japanese business philosophy is in the service of the country, in the service of humanity. Humanity, spiritual because maybe of Buddhist principles, maybe even shit. But it is in the service of the country. The goods and services, Matsushita, is the founder of Matsushita, said that the goods and services that they will produce is the service in the service of the country, especially after wartime. We will flood them with our goods because those goods are what our people need after the war. This one is quite a heavy term. Bigay Kampe Shashubi. But it has a counterpart. One of my concerns was how do I share with Filipinos Japanese management? So what I did was I looked and researched what is the counterpart in the Western world. And the counterpart of Bigay Kampe Shashubi is stakeholder relationship. As a corporation, we impact positively and negatively other people, other stakeholders, and they impact us positively and negatively. That we are not just self-interested. Unenlightened self-interest is pure greed. Enlightened self-interest is stakeholder relationships. That short-term survival, you must also look at long-term survival. That's why you deal with your customers, your government, your suppliers, to maintain good relationships. If you mismanage one of those relationships, you incur a risk, a business risk. Mismanage your employees, mismanage your owners, or mismanage your suppliers, you incur a business risk. Tayo sa kinit, social responsibility. Again, tayo to the business risk, social responsibility. If those working in Japanese corporations, why do they spend so much money for their CSR programs? For the environment? Donations to educational institutions. One, Tigyo to business and culture, which is related to this. Actually, history. I don't know if it was just in Yokohama National University, but we had no case studies. What we studied was business history and economic history. So we were not studying hypothetical situations. We were studying real events that actually happened. In the history of an industry, they have so many books, researches on the railroad industry of the United States, the auto industry of the United States, maybe our own industries. The researchers, the faculty, that's history and culture. Zaibatsu, the Keiretsu, and the Business Alliance. Probably they have the most advanced thinking about not only group, the power of the group, but the power of extended networks of business alliances. They do not think as individuals. As an individual, you are much, much weaker than a competitor that works as like a tsunami. And all of this is for survival. Even before we can think of prosperity and growth, it's always survival. They're not sure. Japan was always never rich before. They were many, many times poor. And that's why they have this culture of sacrificing and thinking of the future. Survival, what it takes to survive. This is the summary from my professor. He wrote a book. That Japan is controlled by managers. Those who own do not manage. Those who manage do not own. So there is no conflict of interest. But the stakeholders are well served by these managers who have this business philosophy or management philosophy. But the government is a major stakeholder. Government is a partner. Government is not an enemy. But the government provides leadership. Concern for employees. The profit objective. It's a profit motive. It's Japanese corporations. Even though they have a long-term orientation. They think of long-term survival, not short-term survival. How do you deploy your people and your resources so that we could think there's 5, 10, 15 years from now? What attracted me to study in Japan was there was a book by Japan Times, and I read it about 1979, 1980, and it was Japan in the year 2000. And it was very transparent where the businesses of Japan will be. IT, robots, it was transparent, there was no secret. By the time I was in Japan, that book became true. They have a long-term vision. A while ago we said that business and culture is important. So my professor asked me, aside from other countries, to understand Japan. And for me, I came upon this value system that was influenced by Shinto, which is a religion unique to Japan. Buddhism, which is also a religion, originating from India, China, Japan. Confucianism, which is an ethic. Bushido, the samurai ethic, which is an ethic, and the Ie Mura values. Ie is the house, Mura is the village. And the ethic is how do you relate with your fellow human beings. The religion is how do we relate to God. So as Filipinos, we're very strong there. But it seems that we're very weak in how we relate with our own fellow human beings. So let's go. So Confucianism originated in China, influenced Korea and Japan. The first constitution of Japan was written in 500 something AD by the Prince Toshoku, and it was highly Confucian. The first article was that Japan must be a nation of harmony, harmony of members. I think Professor Red mentioned that. And yet it's in the Constitution. 500 something, 560 AD. Second, Article 5, provision about not taking bribes. the Constitution. Article 10. Everyone being ordinary people, and since no one can tell what is absolutely right, each should accept majority decision. Is this not the Japanese people as we know them? And it was value infusion by the leadership. The prince, who was to be supposedly the next emperor. Article 15. One should not act from selfish motives but should render service to the public. Confucianism can be seen in Japan. Confucianism can be seen in Korea. The flag of the Korea, South Korea, are Confucian symbols. Those the round thing and those the drawings there, those are Confucian symbols, saying that they are a Confucian state. China, of course, has had history and they have revived. They have Confucius institutes now all over the world. We have influence of Confucius even in the Philippines. Somewhat. Our family, traditional family structures, the father, the children, the brother, the sister, hierarchies. So, only when character is cultivated are our families regulated. Only when families are regulated are the states well to work. In Fujitsu, I was still there, HR, I interviewed all the applicants. Long list, short list. And the president interviews all those shortlisted and job offers. Because we want to know the people coming in who are barangay. A company is like a barangay. An HR manager is like a barangay captain. We want to know whether these people that we're hiring not only have the technical skills, but have the aptitude to adapt to our corporate culture. Their character. And we give more importance to character than the technical skill. We hire good people. We grew from, when I joined, it's about 300 people, to about 1,000 plus. From 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion in revenues. And on the average, single-digit attrition rates for an IT company that is very good. It's about 30 to 40% of the time. Nowadays, call center BPO, 70%. They're very happy already if they hit 30% attrition rates, voluntary attrition. So the first responsibility of the HR manager, the first quality control point is recruitment. Hire good people of good character. We experience the entire life cycle, growth, downsizing, and then rehabilitation. In the downsizing, we had to part ways with 300 of our permanent employees. But the lawyers that we talked that we met and other consultants, they were surprised. We never had a complaint at the group for that large number of people that were separated. Because we hire people with good character. A shake hand is a shake hand. Unfortunate, times are we had to say our ways. We took care of them in the separation. We never got any complaint, not single. That's in hindsight, that was because we really choose the people that join us. Bushido is the ethic of the samurai. The samurais became the role models so that even the merchants tried to follow the samurai ethic and infuse it into their businesses. Because the samurais were the role models. And Bushido was influenced by Buddhism. So if you wonder why in Fukushima they react that way and in later we react that way, the composure in sight of danger and calamity, the tranquility and presence of mind. That comes from the discipline of Zen Buddhism. That is the main Buddhism, school of Buddhism in Japan. There are many schools of Buddhism. Shinto, love of country and loyalty to one's word, including your senpai, your sensei, your boss, your president, your chairman. And Bushido was influenced by Confucius and Mencius. The benevolence of the samurai. Watch the Seven Samurai of Kurosawa. You will see the benevolence of the samurai. For a cup of rice, seven samurais decided to defend the town. They could not be paid, and the farmers does not said we can only pay a cup of rice per week. But because of the benevolence of the warrior, 4 of them died. 3 were left alive. Righteousness, honor and shame, patience and suffering. Gaman. That is a word. Gaman Suris. So, this is a world of the Japanese environment. Recruit people who can persevere, who have EQ, not just IQ. Patience and understanding. Honor and shame. The house and the village values. In Japan, which is unique, even the Koreans and the Chinese agree this, that they are different. For them, the iye is both the family and the business. It's one. Maybe because without the business, the family would die. But that is during the Tokugawa period. That's already the 1500s. That's already the definition of the house. And this is the noren, the symbol of the Japanese family and the business enterprise. It's the symbol of the reputation and goodwill of the house. That's why if you look at the Japanese boxes or magazines, they're always very proud. Established since 1800, established since 19 something. Right? They're always proud how long the customers have trust and faith in their goods and services. The weight of the trust developed throughout the years. Now, in the family business, the members were always to obey the order of the house head, whether that is the father or the oldest son who inherits the business. So again, that's what usually set structure. To suppress one's individuality, to do one's best duty to one's parents, filial piety, to do hard work and save money, to sacrifice for the perpetuity and continuity of the house. Is it not that we can understand that as Filipinos, if we turn on our traditional Filipino values and turn off our Western values that we learned from going to the city and to the universities? This is understandable to us. So the key here is when to switch on and when to switch off. We are the best of both worlds. We are from Asia. So the intrinsic Indian, Chinese, Malay values are with us. And we must not forget it. And yet we understand the West better probably than all the other Asians. Right? Because of Spain, US. That is our strategic advantage in the era of the Pacific. And we must maximize that. Samurai had to hand over to his son a higher rank or title that he himself inherited. And the merchant had to hand over to his successor a bigger wealth than he originally had. We do not have that type of concept as Filipinos. So maybe as a people, they are conscious subliminally that they have to hand over a country to the next generation that is better off than they receive. The village is just like our village. Communal work in building the roads and bridges, in harvesting. We call it bayanihan. Right? But that is the values in the village, in the farms. And seniority-based hierarchy, joint responsibility, group harmony, participative cooperative work, consensus and conformity, group psychology. Those are the operational values. Again, this is not different. But we can understand this. After the war, the Iye and the Mura became my company, my family. But the Iye and the Mura, even in the corporate world, is my family. The Mitsubishi, Kao, Jitsu, it's my family. And you have a salaried manager. As against a professional manager. In the Philippines and the US, we're like NBA players. Where we get the highest offer, we will go. That's a professional manager. A salaried manager is a manager, but he does not leave his house. You never leave your house. And unless probably you kill somebody or you do something very bad, they don't kick you out. Right? So in the olden days, they could say lifetime employment. They cannot guarantee that anymore. So now it is long-term employment. But the world of the group over the individual continues to exist. Because that's their culture. They've been there for hundreds of years, centuries. Hard to undo. Even with globalization. Maybe they can complain that it is weakening, but it has not disappeared. Monozukuri, the manufacturing spirit of Kaizen, and from Zaibatsu after the war, became Keiretsu. Champions of Monozukuri. Toyota, Matsushita, Honda, Morita, and many others. These are just some of them. Mono means think, Zukuri means to make. It describes sincere attitude towards production with pride, skill, and dedication. Pursuing innovation, perfect execution, often disregarding profit or balance sheet. And I agree, it's something spiritual. Whether it is from Buddhist or Shinto roots, there is a spiritual ethic behind the profit motive, which is sometimes superior to the profit motive. This is the Japanese management philosophy. This is not any different. No, it's not. But because the West, you had the invisible hand of Adam Smith, but you have the Protestant ethic, which they said is the reason for the West to suddenly become shoot to number one. Fortunately, nowadays, the invisible hand is still there, but wala na yung spiritual ethics. Just do it became greed is good, wicked is spiritual. We claim to be a spiritual country. We're Catholics and we're proud of it. We're Christian and we're Muslim. We are a theistic spiritual people. Whether we are Muslim, Christian, Catholic, born again. And that is our source of strength. They have flattened, nature has flattened Aten, but they did not flatten our spirit. And it's because of these values, all of these that we talk and the spirit that after the war, from this type of environment, just like they did, in how many years they become the third world's largest economy? The group, the spirit. And they were successful with the communists. 85% of the population say they're middle class. From Hokkaido to Okinawa, they have the same things. And this is self-answered. And they're also very good capitalists. So many countries look east. Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. We continue to look west. I was at AOTS, can you say, by the benevolence of my professor. He endorsed me to another scholarship 1 year. It was even more generous. His allowance was even more generous than the Monozukuri scholarships. He said, you studied theory, now experience it. So I worked in a Japanese company, small medium enterprise, for 1 year. And this is the quality assurance management. I learned about continuous improvement, I said, 7S, 5S. I learned about more Nihongo. Nobody could speak English except 2 people. And Sama is an honorific. It's for kings and lords, that the customer is a king. Sama is the word for the customer. That the life of the small and medium business really is in the hands of the customer. So the customer is really their king. They get their salaries, their bonuses, their benefits because of keeping the client happy. And Gaman is to persevere, to sacrifice. Because this was a small and medium for manufacturing firm. They produce precision spare parts for Nihon IBM and Matsushita and other companies. And at that time, Japan was in a period of Hokusai-ka, internationalization. 1991, 1996. That was before the bubble burst. So I saw Japan at the peak of its prosperity before the bubble burst. I came back to the Philippines and I joined the Japanese company as a marketing research manager. And guess what? They sent me back to Japan for 5 months of intensive training. So that is one of the advantages of working for a Japanese company. The training, and fresh graduates love that. They will close their eyes on the relatively lower salaries versus American or Filipino or Chinese companies, especially the IT people, the engineers. They admire the technology of Japan, and they will accept a lower salary comparatively just to get that technical knowledge and training. I saw the growth of the robots. This was 1990. When I left the Philippines, I in the shelves. I saw the Matsuda or Mazda factory where everything was, automated. Very few people. When I was in Tao, I was fortunate to visit the Wakayama plant, the first plant of Kao Japan. I wrote the truck. In the truck, by computer, you put your orders on what to load to the truck. As we are going to the factory, it is being produced real time. By the time we go to the factory, it is being loaded. And then we go back. I stopped for a while. I looked inside the factory. Almost no people. The soap The shampoo, the face wash, the sanitary napkin, L'Oreal, they're all produced automated. They are packed automated. They are boxed automated. The people there are the ones managing the automation. So if that automated systems can be brought to the Philippines and with our young population, it would be a good wedding. Because Japan is an aging population. So hopefully that can happen. It's a world of scientific marketing. It's not bara-bara in the field. The marketing research system was patterned after IBM. P&G. Their slogan was, "A clean people prospers." Shafu is company spirit. Company spirit of family and a clean people prospers and catch up with P&G. That was the Shafu, the company spirit. So, if you notice by now, it's a world of relationships. It's a world of values. Values-driven leadership. Not just technology. And Kao decided to close the Philippines to set up their factory in China. Fortunately for me, I had an invitation to join Fujitsu Philippines. At that time, I said to Mr. Nakayama, who was trying to invite me, I said, I'm a graduate of the Japanese school. You know I cannot leave Kao in the Philippines. And they closed down. So I started nothing. I can join now. So that's how I joined Fujitsu. And Fujitsu, the chairman was Mr. Manigas. He was a Filipino, but his mother was Japanese. So he was fluent Japanese. Our chairman, our president, was a Japanese, but he was married to a Filipino. So I was very fortunate to have joined executives because it was comfortable for me as a graduate of the Japanese school. And guess what? Mr. Manigas had a article published, and it's about stakeholder management in Hitozukuri. So even though he did not study in Japan, he wrote about stakeholder management. The slogan in Fujitsu is the possibilities are infinite. It's global. In the Philippines, there are about 4 subsidiaries direct and other Fujitsu companies, including Fujitsu 10. But we were the grandparent company. So when they're newly set up, we're the ones who help set them up. And if they have problems, they come to us for consultation. For a time, we were asked to report to regional HQs in report. And after that, we were asked to report directly to Japan because of change of business strategy. And then we were asked to report to the United States, Fujitsu USA, again because of change of strategy. And when the executive of Fujitsu USA came to the Philippines, I was shocked. The president was not Japanese nor American. He was a Pakistani who was a computer specialist and goes around in Fujitsu America. The CFO was not American or Japanese. He was a Turkish who took his MBA in Italy, worked in East Coast USA, got pirated by Fujitsu to be the CFO. And the business head of the new businesses that we were supposed to enter, which is remote services. We run the servers from the Philippines. We manage and service the servers abroad, the US, so it's remote. It's like call center of Filipino, but very technical. He was British. So the world has become global. And therefore, you don't just need IQ, and you just don't need EQ, but you need CQ, cultural intelligence. And you need cross-cultural intelligence as professor. That's the world now, and probably it's getting smaller. In the era, it's now a meeting of virtual meetings, teleconference, video conference, and you must hire the people who will not be culture shocked, who can contribute to that type of environment. Probably the most important thing as an HR manager is that you must understand the mission, vision, and core values of your parent company. Because that's where everything starts and ends. And in our case, we have the Hitozukuri: customer focus, people, quality, sustainable development, growth and profit, respect for individual rights, and so on. Because this is how we will succeed. The mission, vision, and core values is the key to external adaptations. That's where you anchor your marketing strategy and your social responsibility strategy. That you're relevant in the marketplace and you're relevant in society as a responsible citizen. And yet, you need the mission, vision, and values for your core culture, for your business model. You also anchor it on the business mission, the mission, vision, and values. As you plan, organize, lead, whether you are production, HR, or the operations. So as HR, you are the keeper of the mission, vision, and core values in behalf of the executive office. And the best leaders not only get obedience from subordinates, which is a contractual obligation, not enough to get the commitment of followers, but you must turn them into believers. That you're able to get their mind, their heart, and their spirit. Because the shafu, or the culture of a Japanese corporation, is really spirit-driven. They become believers. That's why they will sacrifice for the 7S. It's an empowered environment. It's a world of groups, but in that group, it's not top-down. They don't wait. They're empowered. They contribute where to cut costs, where to improve quality. And they don't wait for the boss. But you can only do that if the Filipino employers are believers of the mission, vision, and core values. HR, again, has that strategic role. This is a checklist. I had never been in HR, but my Oyabul put me in HR. So I had to review my notes in MBA, organization development, corporate culture, resource management, and I had to write my models on how to run an HR department aligned with the mission, vision, core values. So I came up with these 3 circles. That our business is a business, but we must be a member of society, and it's made up of human beings. That Filipinos will have to interact with Japanese, and we must find a way to work together. And it must be aligned, everything that we do is aligned with the 3 circles. That there are 3 brands: the brand of the product and service, the brand, corporate brand of the company, which we have to take care of, and the brand of the company as an employer of choice. I am head of HR. I want to make sure that the graduates from these universities choose Fujitsu, or at least shortlisted, that they will apply. It makes our hiring costs cheaper when they walk in by themselves in the brand. So there are 3 brands, that's why there are 3 circles. And for HR, this is very critical. Maybe this is where many fall. But when they hire good people, some of them leave within the first year because the onboarding was not done well enough. 3 months pa lang, linalabas na yung resume or CV. When you spend money and try your best to attract the best talent. job of HR is to attract the talent that you need, retain the talent you need, and develop the talent that will keep you in business. And it must be aligned, the HR functions must be aligned to the business strategy. It cannot run by itself, out of sync with the business and the mission, vision, and value. That the people that you hire must be able to fulfill the mission and strategy, that they are technically can learn more, are knowledgeable to run the systems and processes, and they will accept the mission, vision, and values, the culture of the company, the shop food of the company, so that they will deliver their brand. A telephone rings. Somebody answers after 10 days. A motivated employee will answer in 3 weeks and say, how may I help you? The stakeholder will notice your values and it will hit you in the pocket. Awareness, trial purchase, repeat purchase, because of the frontline people or the people inside who have internal customers. So this is the logic of the HR, that in behalf of the executives you do all of this. And this is an original model that served me for 17 years. That the recruitment and appraisal and rewards and training and development is the company motivation system at the company level. That this is the first line of quality control. It's like in Thor, right? There is the keeper of the gate. He will not allow anyone to enter Asgard unless clear. Right? Then you must be fair, be competitive. And your objective is performance, productivity, and loyalty. And with this model, we had, as I said, relatively single-digit attrition rates, voluntary attrition rates in an ICT company. And this is the bigger model. So this is the company motivation system. But people who resign because of their direct boss. And therefore, you must promote and develop superiors who know how to motivate. More than 50%, if you look at your exit interviews, you check it. Likely, you can trace it directly, indirectly because of their direct boss. And therefore, this is very, very important. That you put the right people. You put people leaders, not your best salesman, not your best engineer. Put the best people leaders in leadership positions, people leadership positions. And keep your best salesmen and engineers in another way. The other one is, you must hire self-motivated applicants and employees. We will spend money to train, technical training, but we will not spend money to change the character of a person. We will train for hard skills, but we will not train for character. The applicant should have learned that at home or at school. And we cannot have the luxury of trying to change them. Kung may nakakalusot, we intervene and try to change. In the interview process, the president interviews everyone because that's our culture. We want to know who will be joining us. That's the first quality control. So if these three are working in a healthy manner, the company level system, the direct superiors, and the quality and character of your employees, then I bet you will get your productivity and your loyalty, the length of service. My staff, I have only handled HR. I handled admin. They gave me the legal office. I'm not a lawyer, but I have to take care of them. and internal IT, and for a while purchasing. So I became like a Solomon General Affairs officer. But all throughout the 17 years, my home base was HR. We need to coordinate the legal because as we said, it's we need to consult. But I guess I was lucky because in Kao and in Fujitsu, our Japanese managers were decent, good managers. We did not get any ugly Japanese or, like they say, ugly American. So in that case, I guess I was lucky and fortunate that we did not think that the people that they assigned to the Philippines, were executives who, if we tell them that this is the law, they will not try to skirt around and find, no, they will just follow because of their vision and all that. But in the corporate values, we will be lawful, law abiding. So that's what we need to do. But we at the level. This is also something that I use. In marketing, we never meet the customers, right? At the level of P&G or unless you're in sales. And yet, you want to manage the cognitive processes of the consumers. That they become aware and you want to invite them to try your product and you want them to continue buying the product. I tried the same in HR. That I want my employees to say, I like my job. And therefore, in HR, we will try to give them the right job. We cannot put a person just because we need them. Large bodies, like what's happening outside the meeting now. But the person who wants to be in sales is put into HR. That person will not stay. You have to put the person when he is happy. If he wants to be engineer, if he wants to be an accountant, if he wants to be an HR person. And then I will get this. I will get him to say, I like my job. Next one is, I want him to say, I like my work environment. And because I'm in charge of admin, I try to give good work facilities, secure, safe, and be surrounded by the right tools and competency. I want you to say that targets are clear, evaluation is fair, pay and benefits is appropriate, rewards are given and are fair. I am appreciated by my boss. I want you to say, I understand what is going on, so that communications are monitored. So that there will be no rumors, there will be no gossiping. The frontline managers communicate through the chain of command the correct and timely communication. I want them to say, I trust my boss, I respect my boss, I like my boss, I admire my boss, even just one of them. Because if you cannot say that, he will be leaving the company. But the minimum you say, I respect my boss because of the position. And if I am able to get that person to say yes to all of these three, and not even to all, chances are that he is satisfied enough to stay in the company. Maybe at least for another year. Remember that when an employee decides to stay for 1 more year, that is a repeat purchase. When he decides to leave, it is the end of the trial purchase. So with that, the last one is, of course, in the world of Kaizen, we continue to create value in HR by improving the services and reducing the cost of the service delivered. That's the basic. You can tell your boss, this is how I create value. Those are things I would like to share with you.
Let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Kyogi once more. Hindi ko nga po malaman kung Filipinized or Japanese ba yung working company. Okay, at any rate, he together had a mixed up of the lessons learned from a Japanese educational institution, from a Japanese executive uncle, from a Japanese graduate studies, and as an AOTS trainee, and at last as an employee of a Japanese company. All put together, he unraveled to us reflections of 17 years of working in a Japanese company. So with that, let's give a big round of applause to the four speakers. Once more, they need a lot. So, Mr. Korida, the attaché of Japan, gave us the framework of Monozukuri and Hitozukuri. And then, from the Filipino and Japanese management styles, the best of both worlds were given by Professor Yoshino, Fred Yoshino. And then, after the break, two reflections were given by local, our very own Filipinos, Mr. Kyoge and Mr. Bob Tamayang. And then now we have, I think we'll have a very interesting question and answer and panel discussion. So with that, may I open the floor to questions? Questions. We have microphones here, like some trustees would like to give some of those who would like to ask questions. Any brave soul now to ask the question? Anyone? Usually po yung hindi tumitingin, yun who yung may question. Would you like to have a question, sir? I know you have a question. No, anyone? Okay, I'll leave the microphone here. You may address your question to any one of these speakers or all of these speakers. Okay, let me shoot the first question while you're thinking of your very own question. Our session for today is Monozukuri and Hitozukuri, but I never heard the buzzword of Japanese, Hitozukuri. Would any one of these speakers explain about how we can, reconcile the two words or make some similarities or applications to the Filipino manager? Anyone, please? Hitozukuri. We all know, after all the lectures, Monozukuri means it's the manufacturing spirit, right? Okay, how about gentlemen, how about Hitozukuri and the Filipino manager? Professor Fred Yoshino, would you like to answer that? Hitozukuri. Sir? Okay, Kurita-san.
On that subject, so maybe I start.
So Hitozukuri, just directly translate into English, maybe human development or analysis development. But as I mentioned earlier, maybe, so I pointed it out. So Hitozukuri means not just human development. And I had already introduced Monozukuri. Monozukuri is not just manufacturing. So Mr. Kyoge pointed out manufacturing spirit is more suitable for the context of Monozukuri in Japanese language. And this is one kind of work ethic in manufacturing companies, manufacturing process. So Japanese people find the kind of values through manufacturing production process. And this is not just a business for most Japanese people, I think. And this is kind of so manufacturing is directly connected to creating values or creating work ethics or something like that. And Hitozukuri is directly connected with Monozukuri, manufacturing experience. Because for Japanese, for Japanese cannot find values through just transaction, money or product, agricultural product or something like that. So we find kind of values, but not just profit. We find kind of spiritual values to the manufacturing process. We produce just craftsmanship. The craftsman produces product, not just a profit. Not just profit, but we would like to, craftsman would like to produce only one product all over the world or something like that. And we would like to do better, craftsman would like to do best to create more sophisticated or better products compared with yesterday or compared with the day before yesterday or something like that. Through those experiences, we can, for Japanese people can feel kind of achievement, not just a profit. So I feel the word of Monozukuri and Hitozukuri, especially Hitozukuri, not just human development, but kind of achievement feeling or something like that. And through those achievements, we can, so as a person, each person can go to the higher stages. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. The way I understand Hitozukuri means it's not just about human development strategies, but putting it to a higher plane instead of only manufacturing with profit. Is it so? Okay, thank you. You were raising your hand, Alex.
I was about to make my own reflection on that. Because we started this to say about Monozukuri and Hitozukuri. My understanding about these two words is that when you go Monozukuri, if you really practice it down to the details, you have achieved the same thing at Hitozukuri. Because it's more spiritual. Ultimately, it's a spiritual concept. So that's why they only talk about Monozukuri, how it's being done. And then you can hear Mr. Jogi explaining more on the effect of applying Monozukuri into the human side.
Thank you so much, yes, sir.
Maybe for us Filipinos, when we say Hitozukuri, it's about people development or human resource development. But maybe what you should learn from Japanese is the organization development. Empowered organization of individuals who can work in groups that are networked with other groups. I think that is something that Filipinos should take up. The network society, the network. So it's a work of network. Big business network with government.
So it's the networking alliance being done by people, human development, putting it to a higher plane and within the
Empowered
company.
individuals, because that is a Japanese concept. It's a reverse pyramid.
Thank you so much. There you have it. The interaction of Monozukuri and Hitozukuri. Okay, anyone else would like to ask our speakers? Yes, Rachel.
I just had a reaction to the differences in the presentation of the four speakers. I have no problem with the Japanese management system, but I ascribe to the Filipino managers here. I think it should be the Filipino global manager. And if you take any Filipino manager, I'm sure many of you have traveled around the world, and even our skilled workers in the Middle East, we are working out of our natural environment in the Philippines. And I guess these are because of our certain things of our cultural heritage. Let's say we have to speak in so many different dialects. In Japan, you have only one dialect. In the Philippines, you have so many gods or religions. In Japan, you have only one religion, essentially. So those are differences. But see, in our diversity in Manila, we seem to excel in certain things. For example, our call center industry. these are very disciplined because of certain competencies that we have achieved as a Philippine man. So what is the ideal Filipino global manager? I really cannot say what it is, but I think we are the most adaptable manager because we're anywhere between the financial services in all around Asia, and our managers are global managers in many multinationals around the world. So we are succeeding, and because we are the most adaptable race, I'm sure you will agree with that. Now, if you're working maybe with a Japanese corporation, then I guess you just have to adapt to that, or whether you're working in tourism, because we are the most adaptable managers in the world. So thinking positively, that's what I have to say.
That's a good reaction. The Filipino global manager is the most adaptable in the world. Any reaction? Yes, Bong.
I totally agree with that. It just so happened that that we as a Filipino race tend to be more of the Minnesota type of person. Example, during the time of then Mayor Gordon of Subic, when we go to Subic, we follow to the letters their basic traffic rules. Because chances are, if you violate the traffic rules, you will be apprehended once you enter Subic. But now that Gordon is no longer there, I don't think that the traffic rules, the implementation of traffic rules, were as strict as the time of Gordon. In the same manner that during the time here in Manila, during the time of Bayani Fernando, the then chairman of MMDA, everybody was following the rules of MMDA chairman then. I do not say that we are not following the rules of Chairman Tolentino now, but it just so happened that we Filipinos tend to be Nimes-proven. And I agree with that observation that we as a nation, as a race, is very adaptable to our environment. And if we go to the US, then we will follow the US rule. If we go to Saudi Arabia, we will follow the Saudi Arabian rule. But once we come back here in the Philippines, it's labo-labo in halo.
I think most of us would agree to that. Any question? Yeah, sir. Mr. Carlos.
Yeah.
So sorry. Yes, please go ahead, Professor Fred.
Just a reaction first. Francis,
Probably I would add just a few words. Individually, Filipino workers are highly qualified global workers. Actually, my Filipino colleagues are competent. It's very hard for me to survive in that competitive environment. I work for the Filipino Post. And there are thousands and probably millions of the Filipino workers abroad, and they're doing very, very successfully. And their adaptability is at a high level, but probably in terms of a Japanese working environment, the Japanese side would require or expect the Filipinos to work in tandem or in unity, in a group. I see in some point that the Filipinos are not very well equipped to work in a group, helping each other. Individually, they're excellent. Some of them are really, really competent. But they don't seem to be well equipped yet to work collectively as a team member. But in contrast to that, the Japanese side expect them to work in concert with their colleagues.
because they have one unified position when they lost the Second World War. So we do not have that. And Philippines is very fragmented. We are archipelagic. And we have problems also in communication. So with what happened to Typhoon Yolanda, it opens the country, our weaknesses, our problem in logistics and transport. In one of my trainings in Japan, one of the technologies which is very fun, they say it's just in time. How many have heard about JIT technology? Jokingly, I told them that even during my elementary days, I am already aware of just in time, JIT. Because JIT was conceived out of necessity. In Japan, it is cheaper to transport than to store. If you're in Shinjuku, if you're in the main Tokyo, the space is so prohibitive, and they were able to develop transportation. They are a transport manufacturer, so they can move goods just in time. But here in the country, the ordinary workers live just in time. Before even the salaries of the workers, the housewives are already in the gate waiting for the salaries or pay of their workers. If they are not paid, they just in time. Naghihintay lang sila. Because once you improve your productivity, you have the capacity, you start buying in quantity, you can store food in refrigerator for 1 week because you have money to store. But if you do not have money in your pocket, it will be just in time. At times you are late, not in time, but you are late, because you miss your meal. So there is really some myth, there was a time in Japan that tell me your age, tell me where you live, tell me your position, I can tell you how much you're receiving. Because that is the effect of war. Because after the Second World War, the professionals were gone. They were all victims of war. So what was left are high school students. So they have to combine rebuilding Japan, reconstructing Japan, and rebuilding the economy. So the schools, training centers are within companies. Now we may wonder why they are very good in collaborative or in group. We may be individualistic. Right after the Second World War, the Marshall Plan, they restructured the Japanese business ownership. Most big companies are operated by big players, about 10 players. They limit the ownership. But in the Philippines, we are very fond of acquisition and mergers. Only the giants now are thriving. So anyway, I have spoken much, and I know a lot of you would like already to leave. I am very appreciative of the speakers because these values, these pointers are really important. If I recall, 25 years ago, I heard this and still remain very sound pointers. So again, I encourage you to relate it to your organization. These are good pointers, but the application will be relevant only on the level of understanding you will have in your organization.
Thank you so much for that piece of advice, Mr. Carlo. But I think we're not ready to go because we have lots of tokens here to be raffled off. And at this point, are there any other questions aside from the reaction? If there's none, okay, so I'd like to raffle off some of the items here. Are these, okay, I was told that each one of these, okay, is a very nice organizer with USB inside it, a mobile. Yeah, okay, so I'd like to call on, okay. Okay. So in the interest of time, because the speakers who shared us their very valuable experience, we'd like to call them one by one to be awarded the token of appreciation. Let's have them first. We'd like to call on our first speaker, Mr. Florida. Can I have all the other directors of the board to be in front? Yes, alumni team. Would like to thank the name of Mr. Kenichiro Kurida for accepting our invitation to be our speaker during the public seminar entitled Monozukuri, Hitozukuri, and the Filipino Manager. Given this, 22nd of November 2013 at Crown Regency Hotel, Makati City, Philippines, signed by the Secretary, attested by the President Alex Ventura. I'd like to call on next, Professor Fujio Fred Yoshino. Thank you very much.
I'm going to Ayala MRT.
Thank you. We'd like to thank the next speaker, Mr. Bong Tamayaw. And last but not the least, our reflective, Professor Tomas Jovin. Magkaklase pala sila. Hindi sila magkasing tanda. Can we have all the four speakers? We take this as a photo opportunity. First, in front. Oh, the whole team as well.
I mean, that invites everybody to speak.
Yes.
Let's have a class picture. Come on.
Bong has promised that he will publish it in Philippine Daily Inquirer. So, everybody please join.
Do I have a choice?
Hindi lang sa Julius Colega of Line Seki. Toshiba LC Kalubayan. Mark Chestor Carlos, Nutrients. Catherine Araga of TEA. Mabalacat Water District, Jim Espana. Tax de la Cruz, Mabalacat City Water District. Some more? Okay, three more. We have Jan Concepcion, Daimoseco. Edward Alvaro, Manila Catering Corporation. And then Ian Christian.
There will be 5 drinkers at hindi niya pamibigay. Ang hirap niya. Pero ang libre, unlimited use. Sabi kasi, I'll leave that for someone.
Oh, you may wait. You haven't gone yet.
Good afternoon. I'm Yonan Chan from Toner in Philippines. We'll be raffle up 5 Canon printers with unlimited service and supply of ink.
Oh, that's good.
Kung bali 2 months po yung pagkakupulot po kayo, kung yung mga kupulot po, bali mabibigyan po namin kayo ng 2 months unlimited refill and 2 months service at no cost. And after 2 months, if you wish to continue, you have option to continue. Then if not, it's okay, you can pull it out.
With 2 months unlimited usage. Anyone else?